La 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 pop 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 pop. I'm trying to say some words to hopefully find the points where the video keeps clipping. Hopefully we can avoid clipping in the future. Hopefully we can avoid clipping in the future. Hopefully we can avoid clipping in the future. Not exactly sure how the best way to go about introducing this topic. Just watched the Barry's economics video, got me thinking, got me thinking, got me thinking, got me thinking, got me thinking. One of the central ideas raised is that social media functions as a form of zombie media. The algorithm engineered through many of the social media apps we interact with is designed to essentially turn users into mindless consumers by sapping their attention and keeping them engaged for hours on end. The core mechanism behind the way these systems are built is to bypass willpower. There is no real incentive in the app itself for the user to stop. There is only how much willpower an individual can execute in opposition to it. In this sense, the design of the algorithm can be understood as placing users into a suggestive, almost hypnotic state, where they are encouraged to remain in a continuous loop of consumption and are made susceptible to suggestion over time. A key observation within this is that the awareness of the system does not appear to be a meaningful enough motivator for change in behavior. Even when people recognize how these platforms are designed, there is a strong tendency not to act on that awareness. In practice, people continue to scroll, continue to engage, continue to participate despite understanding the implications. This leads to the repeated conclusion that, well, nobody cares. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Not in the sense that people are incapable of understanding the issue, but in the sense that understanding alone is not enough to translate to a behavioral change. Even when the mechanism is explained clearly, individuals tend to remain with it, suggesting a gap between awareness and action that is difficult to close. This connects to a broader point about short term rewards and human behavior. Well, quite frankly, it just got me thinking about it. And one of the aspects or one of the questions that keeps coming into my mind is what human capacity allows us to resist manipulation? People naturally gravitate towards immediate gratification. Systems are increasingly structured around this tendency. The marshmallow experiment, illustrated in the video, clearly highlights the option between the immediate reward and the greater reward later, demonstrating the difficulty of delaying gratification. In modern environments, this tendency is amplified as many systems are designed to prioritize short term engagement and immediate return. This reinforces a pattern where individuals constantly and consistently choose what is immediately available rather than what appears to require patience and restraint. At this point, the discussion shifts into the idea of moral distance and numbness. There is a separation between the user and the creator of these systems. And the greater that distance becomes, the less responsible, or rather, the less emotional weight the user tends to feel when engaging with this idea altogether. A similar effect is observed in how repeated exposure to violence in media can, reduce sensitivity to it over time. This same principle is used to explain how consumption continues even when ethical concerns are known. As seen in examples like large scale retailers, outsourcing labor to poorer countries where the conditions of those workers is something akin more to, significantly unpaid labor, shall we say, in case the algorithm decides to ban the actual word there. But just know that the word that I'm referring to rhymes with lavery. Mhm, mhm. Despite awareness of these issues, consumption does not significantly decrease. Uh, suggesting that moral distance reduces the impact of knowledge on behavior. Within this framework, faith is introduced as a contrasting human capacity. Faith is not described as something that is gained, but rather something that is already present and must be exercised. It is framed as the ability to commit oneself to a greater cause, to hold on to hope, or to prioritize outcomes that don't necessarily seem immediately visible. In this sense, faith functions as a resistance to purely immediate thinking and ultimately can serve as a capacity to resist manipulation. The marshmallow experiment and the story of Abraham both reflect this idea of waiting for a greater outcome rather than taking what is immediately available. Faith is described as the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen, reinforcing the idea that it operates beyond immediate perception and present reward. Ultimately, the discussion develops towards the idea that even though the manipulative structures of these systems is visible and increasingly understood, behavioral change remains limited. People continue to participate, and attempts to disengage are largely dependent on individual willpower rather than structural incentives. Within this context, faith becomes significant as not a religious add on, but as a human capacity that enables resistance to immediate reward systems. It represents the ability to hold on to hope, to commit to a greater cause, and to choose delayed outcomes over immediate gratification. In this sense, what presents itself as an obstacle to manipulation is faith. What prevents someone from becoming completely absorbed or zombified by such systems is not awareness alone, but the exercised capacity to resist immediate incentives in favor of something greater. What do you guys think? Just a little thought bubble there. I'm thinking of calling this section "Keeping It a Buck 50." This has been your host, The Shape of Us. Bye bye.